Chapter 11. Warrior of Peace. Quote, "We may have different religions, different languages, different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race." Gypsy, Lucas, artist. This is to highlight that humans have always had a concept of religion in their lives because people have always had a hunger to believe in something. If it's not a religion, it might be an ideology. For example, Marxism. Unconsciously, they seek the connection to divinity, the spiritual, the unknown, whether it's polytheistic or monotheistic. Polytheism opened the doors to monotheism from the beginning of Judaism, with the faithful Abraham, Moses' Passover, David's chants, and Solomon's building. Shaping the prophets, and after being in Babylonian captivity, the new priesthood or rabbinate is created, conductors of moral, theological, and religious perfection, that which is the law through the prophets. And thus, the Mishnah began with Jewish traditions, and the Talmud, Jerusalem and the Babylonian, with narrative and ethics, to live successively through a phase of a political and warrior character with Alexander the Great, until becoming governed by a non-Jew. And what is a Jew? It will be a religion. It will be a race. A Jew is anyone born of a Jewish woman and never ceases to be one, unless the latter decides to adopt another religion or orientation. And so, this group of Enoch enters the spiritual with a Jewish mystical current, Id Est, the Merkaba, the spirit from above, Kabbalah, tradition, among other forms that go beyond the laws of the world, such as the Zohar, creating this trend of esoteric mysticism, just as Christians have had gnosis, just as the Jewish people await for the second time the coming of the Messiah, the chosen one, the Son of Man, loved by the true and only spiritual Father, and he would bring a government of peace, a government of love, thus overcoming the force of the demon and evil. And this one will be a warrior who will liberate the peoples of the world, especially the Jewish people, from the despotic oppression of the Roman Empire and other leaders, fascists, who still impose themselves on the peoples of this land. Enough of submission to the evil that deposes cruelty upon Mother Earth and seeks to control the will of the mystery of the universe. She herself asks that the higher energy, good and evil, and the lower energies triumph and rule in this wonderful world that is our home now and for the next generations of this new cycle, where the Lord of the Spirits, with a head white as cotton, will speak with the Son of Man, who has a face full of grace, to transform the earth, rejoice before the throne of glory, and dwell among them to see blessings and eternal light for the righteous and chosen. But those leaders, oppressors, and evildoers will not be able to have a place there, because only darkness will be their dwelling and worms their bed. The Son of Man lives with justice and dignity because the Lord of the Spirits has chosen him. Because the numbers of the mystics were accurate, the prayers of the righteous have been heard, and the blood of the righteous has not been shed in vain. So he will defeat the oppressor, and they will come to an end. Just as the pillars of the earth keep moving, as a warning that the deaf do not hear, because their hearts are enclosed with chains and dark cement. Thus, the steps of Behemoth will create a great tremor that will reach the gardens of the house of Lumax, and his footsteps will crush them like cockroaches, because they will see the teeth of Leviathan fall, due to their indomitable corruption, that for thousands of years they have named and used his name in vain. And it is for this reason that the people of Israel, like all the peoples of the world, are free once again and owe no loyalty to any Pontiff Magno or successor. Because these pontiffs have created a group of corrupt governors who use people and humans as convenient objects all over the world, feeding solely on the desire for power and absolutism that inflates their egos, promising peace through the chaos of an inverted pyramid with scarcity and deception. This way, they resell death in humanity, and the father of oppression feeds on it. naming them kings and leaders of immense fractions of the earth. But not by natural selection of humanity itself, rather by imposition of brute force, creating ignorance and misinformation. And if man cannot reason or does not know how to choose, then they will be guided by the first impostor who makes a pact with the distant Lord of Spirits. However, they are so hungry for power and capable of anything, like a bottomless pit that could even deliver the soul of their own daughter to the Leviathan. They also carry terror among the people to make them believe that shelter is in their house, in their so-called salvation religion that is not a participant in the solution because it only drags in the midst of the peoples. Instead, it is just a trap that leads innocent sheep to the final chamber. If they don't adapt to serve or bow to that way of living, whenever we can call it living, they are immediately eliminated. But others would call it existential euthanasia of the human being, because they begin to see without looking at the colors of life, from that rainbow that eventually turns to a white phase, rendering them sad, empty, and depressed. And is this a path of holiness? All religions want to promise salvation. Salvation from what? And how? Since each of us has our own path that is as unique as the fingerprints on your fingers. Unique and authentic in its form. That's why everyone has to make their discovery, get to know themselves and others. So, life must be lived, because it is the best salvation, and in this way, it will bring many more Jesus Christs, Socrates, and Buddhas with other names into this world, because they have lived both sides of the coin without identifying with it, God or no God, entering to observe another ancient way of living found near the heavens and among the Himalayan mountains. We talk about Buddhism, but before that, it is essential to ask, why was Siddhartha Gautama tired of the doctrines? Of those perfect chains of cause and effect, without interruption? Perhaps this was not the only path to liberation, the enlightenment of the path in life. Because he was open to leaving a small space free, and this part of the space was dedicated to something strange, something rare, something new, not demonstrated, not taught. It is the teaching of overcoming the world, the redemption of your own path protected by the same ego until you can let that small internal seed blossom. This non-theistic wave of thinking that does not need to venerate any kind of creator, God brings a unique philosophy, a more peaceful way of living, not only through meditations, mindfulness, or detachment from material things. Born in India, in correlation with the time of the crisis of Hinduism, which proposes living in harmony with the divine order. But Buddhism initially resails as a reformist stream of thought, as the Vedas, principles of Brahma, did not represent at all the values of a society in continuous demographic change and economic transformation due to exchanges, that is, they had formed a static and not dynamic structure. In addition, Siddhartha abandons his entire past, his fortune, his family, to enter skepticism, touching death through bodily suffering, to finally find a middle way through change, which is the only continuous thing in this world, the change of nature. Without ignorance, without illusions, entering the phase of enlightenment, a timeless truth, and also, like Islam, quote, losing the brakes of the strong and will break the teeth of sinners, he will topple kings from their thrones and kingdoms, because they have not exalted him. The Book of Enoch. After the death of Buddha and against his will, a structured and regulated system is formed, although due to socio-cultural differences, a schism arises divided into three main monastic parts. Theravada Buddhism of the elders follows the original teachings of the master and the path to individual enlightenment. This current has strong roots in Cambodia, Laos, Burma, and Thailand. Mahayana Buddhism, the Great Vehicle, which includes Zen Buddhism, seeks enlightenment but delays nirvana to help, teach, and support others around them, as done by the Buddha. This inclination has more dominance in China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam. Finally, Vajrayana Buddhism, which unites with its older brother Bon, the Diamond Path, because we all already have the foundations of consciousness. But we need to realize this. Therefore, it is not necessary to renounce the attachments of the path. Just keep walking, and the path itself will make you more conscious and less attached to earthly things. With its greater practice in Nepal, Mongolia, Bhutan, northern India, and scattered spots in Russia, upon reaching gradual enlightenment, you begin to undergo a metamorphic transformation, entering the divine and starting to abandon human concepts, negative first and positive last. And this is valid for all humanity because God is within you, in your DNA, in your spirit. Moving beyond karma and entering dharma with wisdom, kindness, generosity, compassion, and patience, which are essential in this life. Just like the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths to overcome suffering and the Noble Eightfold Path, to break free from the bonds of Mara. However, this pure stream was contaminated over the centuries with more than 1376 derivatives of Buddhism, and this is nothing more than stagnant and dark water compared to what it was initially. You are sad, very sad, my son. Have faith. Let us heal you with our creed. The patriarch says to him through a cryptic message, sad, yes, I was, for what I lived in the last years, since the wounds inflicted by the covert narcissist are usually invisible to naked eyes, but they are the ones that take longer to heal, and also for what I see the whole world suffering from the deceit of these corrupt leaders, but very happy and content for the days that have come to an end, and living in grace for the days that all the peoples of the world have to live without you in command. On the other hand, I remember the clarity of life that those who desire it will have, and this happiness gives me an inexplicable tranquility. We are victorious, and again, you didn't see it, fool. But I hope that one day you can heal that inner pain you carry. The son explains to the patriarch why he felt pain before joy, but now lives in the middle way. Understanding suffering, comprehending that anguish without cover, frees you from what enslaves you. It's like coming out of the abyss, like a mountaineer reaching the summit. After reaching the top of the mountain, you look at the landscape with such illumination, awakening, happy, and joyful for having resisted with conviction, with that faith before all those difficult moments. Faith is major than pain, that did not let you live. Knowing how to differentiate in an instant what is false satisfaction or pseudo-happiness, that is, dreams that do not fit with reality. Recognizing what is mutable or illusion, and what is stable or real. Knowing that every human being has the power to change their destiny through their levels of consciousness, transforming your love into your entire life, and this is simply called awakening from that long dream. Remembering that joy comes when you return to the origin, to the home, to the reunion with yourself. But to maintain this internal joy, first, you have to detach yourself from those external scales that are only temporary confusions, and this path is quite tough and confronts you with discomfort. However, it is necessary to undergo a process of catharsis, internal purification, and have a greater final reward because that destruction was necessary to create a new place that is more welcoming to live, because there is nothing free in this world. So to see the sky, you first have to die to be born again. And the moment you learn to face unfortunate situations, who is against you? Because life is an ecstasy, just like the happiness of a child having fun dancing in the rain, talking to nature, the sun and the moon, enjoying observing the stars at night. As the child grows in society, starting at home, obstacles arise because it is not normal, it is not healthy. Like when a child in his free time wants to ride his bike in the middle of the field and asks his parents for permission, but his parents say no. Why, if he has not asked for anything extraordinary? Because they have to condition him, because they have to make him feel who has control over him, and thus an unhappy individual is encouraged. He will think that his behavior is wrong, creating a precedent of insecurity for his future life. Instead, parents should give their difficult or rebellious children the freedom to grow healthy. Since there is no need to create ignorant forms of good or bad, it could only be dangerous. Because without those difficult or rebellious children, the necessary changes in the world would not occur. They are the innovators. Look at the life of Buddha, who descends from caste, from prince to beggar, to double the personal and social ego. Not to forget, Jesus escapes at an early age from the impositions of his culture and embarks on an itinerant path in other peoples, Egypt, India, Tibet, far from home. However, this was so radical that even today, the universal church does not accept it, thus leaving a modified or incomplete Bible. Therefore, suffering is the confusion of the soul that is outside of samadhi, complete being, and for this reason, it has to undergo a transformation in the nature of the spirit because it has been manipulated in its growth, to lead it to that perfection in its original nature, breaking free from the repetitive game, that cycle generated by ignorance. Out of the fiction of those places that do not even exist in the minds of those wicked men. Because hell, purgatory, or paradise exists only in Dante Alighieri's divine comedy masterpiece, or in the minds of those men who self-torture, because it is an illusion they have created to identify with an idea, instead of forgetting that they are God, that they are part of that complex. So, they identify more with a body, a mind, and a character they have in this world, disconnecting from their consciousness, from the Almighty, which goes beyond personality or labels, because it is interconnected with the universe. So you came to make a revolution in my house. What do you think you are, the new version of Che Guevara? The patriarch wants to provoke the son with an old manual question. Actually, your question reminds me of a cap my father bought me when I was just a teenager, the son thinks. Why, what was so important about that cap? The patriarch asks, very curious. Not much. It was just a simple black baseball cap with a red tip, but it said, Rebel. The son gives a very short and simple answer. Yes, it's true. You are very rebellious. It seems like you've drunk the wine of the soul, ayahuasca. The patriarch confirms his response. Quote, that is why you seek so many substitutes for joy, only when joy is not in you. Maxim Gorky. Of course, because being rebellious is something we all have, you know? But being revolutionary is for those who want to take something away, eliminate or change a type of society, to replace it with another type of system. Instead, the rebel is an individual who wants to live in peace with those around him and doesn't want to be a puppet of any system, of any rigid structure. Because I have no intention of changing anything for anything. Since if we go to the past and carefully observe the different political and social phases, capitalism, communism, fascism, and socialism that we have experienced in human history, we have ended up with the same result in one way or another, because they are all related. Thus, the son explains what kind of rebellion lives within him. And then why so much violence against our religion, against our house, against our clergy, if you were born and raised in it? The patriarch asks the son. Ooh, holy patriarch. Not at all. For me, they are all the same. Judaism, Christianity, Islamism, Hinduism, Buddhism, or Sikhism, without any distinction. And I don't represent any of them, rather in all of them, because my master, the Lord of the spirits, created the cosmos, the universe, and man-made religion. That's why what you see is just the reflection of your initiatives, but magnified. Because I didn't expect it, one effect for each cause. Since you feel omnipotent, with the right to direct the fortunes of this world, as your structure has become strong, large, powerful, and somewhat despotic. So every individual who finds happiness, ecstasy, enlightenment, becomes an enemy of your church, a rebel against your system, because it goes against your doctrine. Let's be honest and think about this. Because the revolutionary wants to exploit and not be exploited. Instead, all I ask for is respect for me and for all the houses of God in this world. To be able to live in peace on the most beautiful planet in the universe that we know so far. Respecting the laws of nature. In this way, the sun offers the patriarch a vision of what his pseudo-Roman Empire is doing and undoing in secret around the world. But everyone has seen and known it for a long time, yet few have the courage to denounce it. We can see that the most wonderful and extraordinary things on this planet or universe, that is, the hidden pantheism in plants and animals, have no government, no administration, and certainly no regime. So why so much need for a government? Where does this hypochondriacal need come from? Where does this vicious circle come from? And then why not give the human being the opportunity to be more independent? It would be divine to have the opportunity, if only governments gave you the power to govern yourself and cut that iron umbilical cord. But unfortunately, governments will not give you this opportunity. No matter if you understand that as an individual, you don't need any government system to live in joy and or in balance with the planet or the universe. And so, we are slaves from generation to generation, from the moment we have knowledge, from our childhood to old age. They make us choose condemnation 1, party or hell, or Enfer A, or condemnation 2, party or hell or Enfer B. As rulers, politicians, not all, but mostly, and in particular those corrupt ones, are people with serious psychological complexes, mostly with self-esteem problems, very unstable and weak. Fed by a terror, by a fear that if they don't have power, or if they are not politically influential, then someone else could control them. And that's how they think in their unhealthy minds. They could be used, exploited. Someone might take advantage of them. So it's better to be the one who exploits, who destroys the other, your own blood. That's why the sun doesn't want to belong to any religion, to any political party, to any social club, because they all show the same philosophy. Burst or burster, because he just wants to live his life freely, creating a certain frustration of freedom around individuals. So you don't have to feel guilty because you're not asking for anything wrong. Since joy, happiness is a right of life that we all have from the moment the sperm wins the race of life. They continue their dialogue through a private line in the form of a classic analog telephone with circular dial numbers. One is red and white, and the other is red and black, but these phones change color continuously from left to right, and from right to left. You have a very big ego. The patriarch responds to the sun with his techniques of provocation and justifies himself. If the ego is the determination, I have not to allow this to happen again. That is, what you try to do with your silent allies who move like damn slugs, especially with your under-the-table agreements with your invisible friends, the bear, and the warlike company. Your ambitions, yes, your megalomaniac, macromaniacal, and disturbed intentions. Well, yes, I am full of ego until I finish what I started. And don't worry, I am already forgiven for what I found in the Dhammapada. But you rejected a peace agreement when I proposed it, and you lowered the flags in a cold way, like the white snows of a strong winter and the yellow fever that torments your body while I waited for you in the hall of that cathedral that survived World War II, where it was an excellent moment to make a peace deal and live in harmony with the peoples of each house without making it public. The sun reminds the patriarch, "Che, I didn't come because I couldn't." The patriarch justifies himself again to the sun. Quote, I found the Antichrist, where he lives, and where they procreate, just like the house where it has nourished the Leviathan for millennia. Unknown. Why did you do all this? Always playing the same deceitful music, so that the thousands of peoples and I have to believe the unbelievable, the unnatural. The sun asks the patriarch, Dear son, remember that I did what I did because I love you, only because I love you so much, and I only want you to show me how to channel that divine power. The patriarch responds and justifies himself to the son for his ambition to attain the channeling power he does not possess. That's why you wanted to have me locked up like a monk lost in a plastic city, while I suffered from amnesia guided by your Smith collectors, while secretly blackmailing and controlling the large Gradalese family with your alliances. Also, I can't show you anything because what you call divine power doesn't come from me. The master chooses the disciple, not the other way around. The son responds disappointed to the patriarch. What blackmail are you talking about? What agreements? Secrets? What alliance? No, I am a pious man, and I only make alliances for the peace of humanity, to save the souls of my faithful, of my sons and daughters. And if you don't believe me, you can visit my archives to see what you find. The patriarch confirms to the son, knowing the maze of traps and restrictions in that place, as finding something would take more than 6 months, and the permit is already cancelled. Of course, you are not like your predecessor, the 12th, and we are not in the times of Hitler and Mussolini, not to mention that even your sons and daughters, Cesare Borgia and Lucrezia Borgia, who is the same person, do not play the same cards as you, because she is not with you, chose the new balance and wants what is good or bad for all peoples according to your perspective. Not forgetting that this time we all go to heaven, yes, all to paradise directly, free from purgatory, since the bear and the dragon cannot protect you and are tired of this game too. The son prophesies the future of the patriarch and his wavering creed. Then, in the grand agreement of the two patriarchs, the transition dialogue unfolded between the betrayed and the usurper. The latter was forgiven and allowed to live out his last days, but the usurper had to first go and save souls, facing a new emerging virus in Africa that only the patriarch with his order of saints could heal in this world. This alliance of Pax und Leben was to ensure a passage without pain and suffering for many innocent people. With the anointed spiral celebration, the agape of the guests, and everything was ready because it was the right thing to do, concluding a journey within the Via Culturalis di Cologne, visiting the Kette Kollwitz Museum with Der Neue Simplicissimus, reminding us of the suffering humanity endured in the First World War, in the Second World War, and aiming to prevent the arrival of a Third World War, with gratitude for the oblation of flower crowns and meditation in the church without a roof, reminding us of what we want to avoid through countless wars. Do you see? You are so full of yourself. Who do you think you are? Asked the patriarch to the son. Yes, my cup is full, and I am very full of myself because I am what I am. I am the Son of God. I am a spiritual being, having human experiences, like all those who seek and find him. This is what I am. I am nothing. To be an instrument, a channel that receives, a receptive, humble and empty vessel to channel the secrets of our origin through the existence of the human being in this cosmos, responded the Son of Man, identifying himself in his being. But this is natural, recognizing God in you, as if you were to pass through India, as Jesus did. In other words, it is not a sin. On the contrary, it is the recognition of the self that is already integrated into your membranes. However, this way of thinking in the West is prohibited by the dominant religious culture. But what sacrilege are you committing? No, God cannot be in you. God is one and universal, without equal, but your ego is limitless. The son is scolded by the patriarch. Yes, I am nurturing the ego, and I won't eliminate it. I will let it grow, mature so that when the time comes, it will fall from the tree of life like a ripe orange. Trying to eliminate the ego prematurely with religiosity is only for the foolish who haven't let their ego mature, and now it desires the eternal wrongly. In other words, it grows an unbounded greed. That's why the ego deceives you, making you have a devouring and insatiable hunger. Remember that before losing the ego and letting it fall, you have to reach it because a weak ego cannot disappear. Thus, the son does not deny his ego and explains to the patriarch why this has a natural course in every human being. For this reason, meditation and visualization help recognize your current character and ego in the present, without doing much, just observing, like yoga practitioners. To avoid living like aristocrats who live in the past because of the surname they bear. Only the rich can become poor. Remembering how Gautama Buddha abandoned his fortune to beg on the streets, but he did it with an elegance that even in such an act, it was something wonderful. Just as Jesus dedicated himself to serving at the dinner table. In this way, in the West and against religion, psychology is always feeding the ego because it allows you to face it, preventing it from being latent and continuing to live in another form. And in the East, the absence of the ego is professed, creating the difficulty of neutralizing it. Instead, in the East, death is recognized as part of life, bringing more tranquility from it. It's different in the West, which fights and fears death. In other words, it runs and fights the certainty. C is major than U, with the uncertain. Thanks to religious cultural teachings, therefore, fearing death is fearing life. It is fearing love, and consequently consciousness itself. This leads to severe psychological problems of generalized lack of love, not allowing the possibility of meditation and loving a dollar more than a flower. But if love is overflow and not necessity, it is giving without expecting to receive. And this is the real revolution, the revolution of love, which is entering the center of yourself, penetrating it, opening all the doors of the castle without keys, until you can share it with others, entering the center of your neighbor or partner without fear of being hurt because you have nothing to hide. It's not just about sex, since this is only peripheral. Instead, before sex, you embrace, listen, and make them laugh. And after sex too. That is human love. It is the love of meditating in silence, in intimacy and embraced, looking at each other without shame, without a word. Love is seeing that person again who is constantly changing and still loving them, creating a new element within, Y hydrogen, H nitrogen, V oxygen, and G carbon. Just like the fusion of matters, hydrogen and oxygen giving birth to water, something clean, something crystalline, something new. Then there are those in the West who seek God or salvation in the heavens. In the East, they know that we have that enlightenment within us, or that God who lives in you, yes, within you. And he commits to his consciousness and totality, with his universal self born with you and not created, rather discovered, because it was already there for you to discover, to add an implicit value in being. And this is the goal, to give what you possess, and I am not talking about material things, since not even life is yours, it's just a borrowed energy that will return to its place of origin at a certain time. Consequently, you cannot give anything if you have not developed, or if you put your trust only in knowledge, it will leave you defenseless and vulnerable, and it won't allow you to see things beyond. Instead, look at what Socrates did. I only know that I know nothing, and that's why he tried the poison without fear. In other words, making yourself ignorant after gaining knowledge. Because it's not you, and it's not yours either. It has been borrowed because it's not your life experience. Since it is a mechanical memory, that knowledge to unlearn. When you know a lot, but are tired because you don't know who you are, you know so much and gain nothing. When you know what is necessary, but not essential, when you want to get out of that samsara, when you tire of being a drop against the ocean because it creates suffering, and then you approach a wise man, a teacher who helps you unlearn everything, to transcend the mind in the innocence of a child. This means stepping away from yourself and getting closer to awakening. leaving behind the bitterness of knowledge to enter a purity without consciousness, leaving the garden of Adam and Eve to go through the path of the valley of death, to get closer and closer to the Creator who ultimately makes you wake up to enter the final state, an inner space, but mature, innocent, not ignorant, not to be corrupted, without a mind, without knowledge, without learning. Therefore, listen meditatively, like that ancient medicine that gives you the state of health that sustains it to meet with energy. And this teaches us the analogy of the Tao to be realized with its feminine attraction, without insistence, without force, because that attraction is a natural seduction that penetrates consciousness and heals it with that pure, clean frequency. Son, we profess religious humility that destroys the ego from the root. Instead, why do you harbor so much hatred against us, your family? The patriarch wishes to understand the son's way of thinking. First, I don't hate you, and all I see is a very devouring way of speaking, or else you wouldn't stab your brother who was doing the Lord of Spirits' task. Instead, you threw him out to watch him slowly die in suffering. And this is what you show to the world, despite talking about humility and wanting to spread this idea through the propaganda engine of your house. So, remember this. I don't hate you, I just lost respect, esteem, and every bit of appreciation vanished due to your deceit. Don't worry about family, as I've always had one, and now it's much larger and more diverse than before. So I hope you can heal and find the keys to open that padlock chaining your house, your heart. The son reminds the patriarch of what he did, which he continues to deny with all his might, like a demon unwilling to leave a possessed body. He refuses to profess his true name, not even to let himself be pierced by the wild boars of his residences. And this is called hypocrisy, this false humility that only deceives yourself and nothing more. That's why it's necessary to be selfish, with the ego glued to the tree, letting it grow until it matures, but not keeping it forever because it is counterproductive for you and those around you. It's like the child who becomes a man and understands that he has new responsibilities in his life. And this is a medicine that will not allow the ego to become hypocrisy, because the unripe fruit is not ready to detach from the tree, and it is not yet ready to detach from its preceding roots, from its past generations. Because this ego will become your hell, a horrible nightmare with 9 cycles, full of suffering, unless you are wise and decide to abandon what only lives there to destroy you. Since you are a man of absolute motivation, because you have enlightened yourself with that path, that way, that different path from ours, and moreover, you think like the Buddhists because of your reincarnation as Shakyamuni, the Neo. So we will use your remains together with the thousands in ashes, your brave ancestors who made a beautiful ending. The patriarchy or the Saturn within him never gives up and continues to threaten the son with very creative death penalties if he does not kneel at his feet. Dust you are, and to dust you will return. Isn't that so? The son responds to the patriarch without hesitation. Exactly. It has always been like this. We are ashes. The patriarch responds with hatred because he already wants to see him in ashes. Then prepare yourself, because after my resurgence, others will rise like a phoenix, spiraling to infinity. They are maidens and knights nominated as warriors of peace for the thousands of peoples, and they have no plan B because they only have a plan AI of artificial intelligence that regenerates in fractions of a second, depending on their environment, conditions, or situation. The son rebuts the patriarch, telling him to prepare for the diabolical and divine creativity of his sons and daughters. Us too, we never give up, and we are certainly more determined and powerful than La Tua Familiuccia. The patriarch replies with his air of narcissistic covert greatness. Quote, Ein Sof is the non-being, infinite, indivisible, and all-embracing. Baruch Spinoza. Well, that's what it's about. And no, I haven't enlightened myself. I haven't achieved anything. I simply came to see what I had never lost without having to wander or work for something, because I only waited on the Lord of Spirits, and he pulled me out of the swamp, out of the pit of death. He heard my cry, and he inclined towards me to listen to my inner self. So it's better to come out of that hypnosis, that Kafkaesque dimension. On the other hand, you can describe me with mediocrity in your twisted history, with your bitterness, and I will rise. You can throw me into the dirt, and still, from the darkness, I will rise. Like the sun and the moon, I will rise. Do you want to see me with a broken and bowed head? Do you want my shoulders slumped like tears with a weak soul due to the screams? Does my cordiality offend you? That I smile as if I have gold mines in my yard? You can attack me with your words. You can cut me with your looks. You can kill me with your hatred. But still, like the air, I will rise. The Son of Man tells the Patriarch that there will not be a good ending if he continues to insist with his macabre ideas of battles, disasters, or wars, because he will not surrender to evil. Because he is like water, you can block the river with rocks, and still it will find, discover, or create a new path, a new place to flow through. And the more you try to stop it, the higher the water level rises until it drowns you. I have to meditate on it in my prayers, in my lauds, in my spiritual retreats. No more lust, because it is a moment of non-indifferent entropy. It is very difficult. After seeing that I am the center of the world, that the stars revolve around me, and that the sun rises only for me, being the center, being the Word made flesh, being the rock on which the house is built, and now taking it to the climax, taking a peg to leave this white tunic that we like so much. Look, I had become accustomed to it, and abandoning my alter ego and returning to saying I, it's tasteless in power, having to go from we to I. I won't deny it, son. It's very painful, abandoning all the followers and believers who Christianly await my sermons. The Patriarch responds with much sadness because it is painful to leave the seat of power when you don't have other essential elements supporting you. I know, it can be painful, but it's necessary. Otherwise, it will be so painful that you won't want it in your life anymore, in your house, because this will help you mature and understand that you are not the center, because the center is everywhere. The center is God, the all. And the ego is just a necessary dream to culminate a phase of the journey, or conversion, if you want to call it that. Come out of that eggshell that doesn't allow you to see the light. The sun shows the Patriarch a path to peaceful resolution. This path can be painful because it sometimes brings truths that are uncomfortable to accept initially. It also distances you for a while in solitude and avoids distraction, but this precise moment helps you mature and grow your energy, become a seer, create a mind, body, and spirit, unlock. With a healing of what was childish and an approach to the divinity of the Lord, God, the universe, the individual living within you. That's why you have to act without using logic, considering the dialectic of life. Why destroy a house to build a new one? Because it is part of the transformation of life. Die to be born again. Make this effort effectively without expecting a reward, because you already know that doing good, loving, and doing what is right will have a reward from the universe. Look at how plants or animals perform their tasks for the sake of life, voluntarily, without asking for anything in return. My son, if I love you, and I did it to bring you back to judgment, because I want to educate you in the gospel of our temple, make you come out of that tunnel, that ugly darkness. The Patriarch puts his hands forward, seeing the fall from a high precipice. I understand perfectly, and I can even respect you as a human being if you set aside your ego and if you speak the truth. I made a mistake, and I want to apologize for my previous behavior, demonstrating that I am correcting my conduct to live in peace in this world, opening my mind and moving away from those old patterns of endogamy that even caused the downfall of the Hamburg Empire. Because as for the rest of the things, you know how they have to happen. The son does not let himself be deceived by hearing words that contain artificial and synthetic sweetness, but by actions that give and show the true intention, an effective inner healing. Well, you must have faith. Yes, faith, or as the English say, trust. Yes, faith in my word. You seem to have forgotten that absolution is obtained through the honest declaration of sins through confession. The patriarch integrates his dogma, his defense intelligence. For this very reason, honesty, because all of this was too easy, right? What a fool you are, patriarch. Even though you rejected accepting this agreement and tried hundreds of times to kill me with your red ties and your de-Italianized state, you still don't understand, but everything you're trying, stirring, and attempting to do to me, you're already provoking it to yourself in your own house. And please don't worry about my darkness because no one can get rid of it. Rather, you can only turn on the light to counteract the opposite. The son wants to make the patriarch understand that the ideas he wants to cultivate in his mind are not his paths, since he is an individual man, independent of any idea that is not his intuition and that of the Lord of the Spirits. You know, I have a quid pro quo for you that you cannot decline. I can give you the diadem of the last king with the Gemunden Codex, and I can anoint you as the last legitimate emperor in the Rectitudo Regis est Noviter Ordinati for this land with a unique ceremony in Liber Sensuum, and in turn, you will have the best archbishop by your side to have absolute knowledge and control over the face of the earth. The patriarch proposes to the son his quid pro quo par excellence. You know, the Lord of the Spirits is tired of these power games that you have used for centuries, this tit for tat, because you know better than anyone that he is the only one to grant and take power on this earth. Just as nature, fauna, and flora will recognize him, and the thousands of peoples will recognize him as their servant. Furthermore, I don't need your collectors to serve my people, because these peoples are efficient and collaborative if they are shown the instruments and instructions. The son calmly responds to reject that ridiculous proposal. I wouldn't reject this opportunity. The patriarch proposes to the son again to make him believe that the offer made is important. It's just that this reminds me of the ancient story of a Sufi beggar who was like a Swami. While walking near the palace of an emperor, this man had little with him, only the old clothes he wore and a small wooden chest for alms. Yet he was an elegant beggar in his posture. The son tells the patriarch a new parable. But he was still a beggar. The patriarch responds angrily. Yes, he was a particular and demanding beggar with an imperial aura. He only accepted alms from rulers, kings, and emperors. That's why when he approached the emperor's garden gate, a guard at the door wanted to give him some coins, but the beggar refused them. Meanwhile, the emperor walked and observed what was happening, and he was surprised. Says the son to the patriarch, "This is absurd. A beggar rejecting coins." The patriarch says incredulously to the son. So the emperor approaches and asks the beggar what's going on. So the beggar explains his conditions for receiving alms. The emperor responds, "I am the emperor of these lands, and I can fill that little chest you carry." The emperor asks his slave to give him a bag of gold coins, and when he pours the coins into the chest, it remains empty. The emperor's ego gets hurt, and he gets upset, sending immediately for more gold coins and precious stones. However, the emperor continued to pour his wealth into this small chest, but nothing filled this strange, magical, and bottomless chest. Finally, when the emperor has nothing left to offer in that chest, he asks the beggar to teach him the mystery of living. The son tells the patriarch, "I don't understand. What does this small chest represent? Bull. Tired and angry, the patriarch asks the son. The human mind, because the more you give it, the more it will keep asking without end. And that's how the mind is. That's why, throughout history, you've observed so many emperors, kings, and rulers with this limitless desire that leads them to decline, even to take their lives, and not recognize them for anything. The son finishes telling the patriarch, because the Son of Man serves the Lord of the spirits and the thousands of peoples, and he is a servant who leads a life of work and responsibilities. This allows him to live a so good life parallel to that of power, because power corrupts and destroys, so he knows that it is wise to govern through the delegation of the large family with love and compassion. He has the rings of both worlds, light and dark, yet he does not put them on his finger. He has the throne and does not sit on it. He has the crown and does not wear it, because the day he does will be the end of humanity. Then the Lord of the spirits will give him 3 times, that is, 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 years, 3 decades, 3 centuries, or the third bomb before wiping everything out. And this, oh my thousands of peoples, this must be avoided at all costs. Because he protects that natural power, but does not use it for his own purposes, and the future generations of the light must better avoid it. The only thing that the Son of Man can carry with him is the sword to work and protect his family, his daughters and sons, and the thousands of peoples. One of the 4 elements, in other words, a quarter of absolute power. From there, the son finds himself in Rome again and visits the patriarch in person to receive him with a banquet in the following way. But your Boludo son, Che, what are you saying? No, no, no. Indeed, I just want to invite you to have a meal, a dish of meat or fish, whatever you like. Because we are all about pax et bonum, and we only want peace for our lineage and my future successors. So, we won't just have an Italian coffee, not even mate. Instead, I want to introduce you a delicatesse to taste of tender ortolans meat, accompanied by the golden chalice with the blood of pure wine. This way, we have enough time to clarify everything and show you important objects that only we have here in our mecenate collection. The patriarch responds, very annoyed by the son's rejection of his illusion of reign, but at the same time he invites him to dinner and to celebrate with his majesty, covered in his bizarre apocalyptic ritual. From the moment they open the door of the room. Thank you for the invitation to this wonderful dinner, but I won't sell the grace of the spirit that has settled in me for a plate of lentils. Moreover, the air in that palace is very heavy, full of mites and many bugs, so it would be better to keep walking outside. The son rejects the dinner at the palace, covered in an apocalyptic ritual due to the patriarch's inconsistencies, and suggests leaving his realm. And where do you want to go? What would be better than here? I don't understand, son, but I offer you my consent, the patriarch replies. After walking through the antechambers of this enormous place, full of wealth and world heritage, they approach the lock of the 3 realms, where the orange garden is located, to continue discussing a tolerance agreement. Do you smell the perfume? Look how beautiful. We are in the orange season. Sometimes I don't know if Van Gogh or Frida took an orange or looked towards the sun to paint what they wanted to express. The son says to the patriarch while talking about pure art. No, don't talk about that strange painting Frida did. It makes no sense. The patriarch does not want the son to show what she expressed. Why did Frida understand everything in her vision and put it on a canvas? Or why didn't others have time to stop her? The son responds to the patriarch with some questions. Quote, a love is like a serious illness, an illness from which you never entirely recover. Charles Bukowski. What are you talking about? About that health problem this beautiful ragazza lived through or the tragic accident she had. No, that's just fate. Poverina. Io ho pregato per lei. Quando l'ho vista, io ho pregato per la sua anima. Io ho pregato al Signore perché la guarisca e la custodisca. Io ho pregato anche per i suoi genitori e per la sua famiglia. Poverina. But she had an absurd illness, this ragazza. How sorry I am. She didn't know what she was doing. The patriarch says to the son with a slight smile on his face, showing his hidden pride of a narcissist. However, this is what is hidden in his heart, because he enjoys the tragedy of others, treating them like garbage with a stench. Indeed, O patriarch, I have to tell you that you've been talking gibberish, cantinfliando, with your chauvinism for a long time, and as your house desires peace, leave that throne that is not yours, and even your own body revolts against it. Look at yourself. Otherwise the swords will continue, and your kingdom will have no peace. Furthermore, I won't share a table with someone who made a secret alliance with war criminals against humanity. At the same time, it is not pleasant to treat people like garbage and then pretend to worship God. Whom do you want to deceive with your hidden pride of narcissus perfume? The son rejects the simulation of piety on the island, covered by the patriarch's inconsistencies and his tax havens as they cross the Tiber River Bridge. Then the patriarch stops while whispering to one of his assistants to bring him something to give to the Son of Man as they stop to admire the landscape from the Sant'Angelo Bridge. After a few minutes, two assistants approach, one with a birra, and the other with a ciclia in hand. What do you prefer as a gift before you leave, a ciclia or a beer? The patriarch asks the son before leaving the holy house, and also to find out if he still believes in their old, authoritarian dogmas, which control in a totalitarian yet silent manner, like Jesus, a religious superhero for the accountant patriarch who has created a monetary caricature of an old institution in decline due to inflation. Give me the beer, a Weiss beer with a good mini Caribbean cigar. This brings me more serenity, grace, and joy in my being. If I don't drink it or smoke it, well, I'll use it as sea perfume. As your daughter's origami letters in every hotel we found that old manual facsimile was enough for me to understand that it only creates falsehood and confusion in the minds of the people. This is how the Son of Man bids farewell to the patriarch. So you feel like God, and you don't need any of our ciclia delicacies. You're an incurable psychopath. See, humanity needs security in this life, full of uncertainties, not knowing what will happen after death. The patriarch rebukes. Actually, that's not what I said. I just stated my preference. I don't like industrialized white sugar because it's too refined, not natural, and causes cancer, but give me honey if you want. The son explains while drinking the cold beer straight from the bottle and lighting his mini cigar. You have an enormous ego. That ego will kill you. The patriarch reproaches him, yelling with unbridled anger while shaking his hands forcefully. Quote, Palo y palo, musica de palo. I can tell you that if the ego doesn't exist, then what's left inside a human being? The son asked the patriarch's father directly. I can't answer that question because I don't know. Only the Creator knows. The patriarch raises his arms to the sky in beatific tranquility. Well, you're the one who believes in God and still doesn't know that when there is no ego, only God remains in the being. The son responds directly to the patriarch. Now that you have understood this mental game, what do you want to do? You want to destroy my God, che? Palo, tell me. You want to destroy my institution, and then we will send everyone into total chaos. We will send everyone into nihilism and anarchy. What do you think Nietzsche didn't try to do the same thing you are doing now? God is dead, ha 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 ha. The patriarch smiles at the son and was half happy to know that he came out of the shell of ignorance. But the trust is that the patriarch has the war card, the last card to pull him in this game of poker. No, not because I don't lack the balls, cojones, but because I love seeing Bosch's still life, Natura Muerta, and the Musée d'Orsay is already full of these wonderful paintings. So we need dead institutions that are great museums, because every human being needs to chain himself to these deceptions, to bind himself to these religions. First step, and then coming into contact with nature, the original and not tasteless food, second step. That formless spirit that breaks those limiting patterns of your matrix because this spirit is superior and allows you to penetrate those layers that do not allow you to see with love, the best element, and not substitute for this fallacy. That love that allows you to see everything with another perspective, that allows you to enter into true intimacy with yourself and with those around you. Confirms the Son of Man to the Patriarch, because I have indifferent to his institution. And in an instant, in panic and haste, the Patriarch takes the momentum and throws himself off the Sant'Angelo Bridge, falling into the river, attempting suicide from the impact of the fall. However, even with the collapse of his body, he doesn't succeed. Flailing in the water and desperate due to intermittent suffocation, the current drags him forcefully until his own internal fluids bring him closer to the shore, and his assistants try to pull him out with pieces of branches, but can't. "Patriarch, give me your hand," Niall pleads, one of his men who was extremely worried about him and what was happening. "Give me your hand," Ganges demands, another of his desperate assistants. "Come quickly, please, give me your hand," Danube shouts, exasperated, the third of his security assistants who wanted to save him, but he refused to give his hand. And in these last minutes, during which his four assistants are losing every type of hope, because they see him more agitated as he is drowning, Plata looks at the sun and touches him, looking at him and says quickly, "Help him." The Son of Man approaches and says, "Take my hand, Patriarch." The Son of Man says to the Patriarch with a firm voice. And so the Patriarch PPF, as if driven by a supernatural force, pushes himself out of the water to catch the hands of the sun. Immediately, like a scorpion, he bites one arm, but fortunately, his assistants help to separate him quickly to bring him to safety. In that moment, the sun sighs, meditates, Om Mani Padme Hum, to control his anger, and thinks about what to do with the Patriarch. But he does nothing because he understands that it's only an act of helplessness and desperation. "Look at your hands, Patriarch. They are small and shaped like a sea snail. They are identical to the prophecy." Plata says out loud to the Patriarch. "Shut up, Plata!" The Patriarch yells angrily at Plata. "No, it can't be. How is it possible that he found that inner peace and harmony? After we separated him from his parents and took away everything he owned, leaving him with a deep scar for life." The Patriarch complains loudly to Plata, but everyone present heard him as well. "See, Patriarch, scars and wounds heal if you treat them with care and love." The Son of Man responds, "No, because the scar always remains." The Patriarch answers angrily once again, "Yes, the scar is just a small reminder to help you remember what you've overcome and handle it better next time." The Son of Man reminds the Patriarch of the meaning behind a scar. At the same time, Plata moves away from the Patriarch along with the Son to continue talking because he couldn't stop his curiosity, which from the beginning of his arrival at the palace, at the Patriarch's house, wanted to have the moment to talk to him. "How did you manage to convince him?" Plata, his personal secretary, approaches the Son in haste, asking and placing his left hand on the Son's back, since he didn't believe that the Patriarch had more confidence in a stranger than in him, who had faithfully served that house and the ancestors for so many years. "By the splendor of Zohar, it is the natural law of giving and receiving. Because forgiveness is greater than the hatred I had for him, The son tells only this to the personal secretary. Now I see it. Now I understand it. But I left my land. I left my beloved. I left my profession, all my possessions and wealth to serve this religion. Plata looks downhearted, while the other three are assisting and drying the patriarch who is on the ground bathed. Are you sure you left everything behind? Look, now you carry an even heavier burden that prevents you from seeing beyond. The son replies to Plata. So, what can it be? I don't understand. Plata cannot observe his interior and therefore responds with more questions to the son. That big eye you carry with you that prevents you from breaking those bonds, leave it behind, along with the great harlot who is on this scarlet beast with 7 heads. Look, they don't want to show the truth. They continue to make sacrifices to evil spirits, only for the desire to use the power of chaos and avoid being reformed. That's why I tell you it's better to leave it behind before Behemoth shakes that land with its gardens, because they will only remain as a memory, becoming the 8th wonder of the ancient world. The son tells Plata, but I don't know what can I do to live. At my age, it's difficult for me. Plata is more worried because he doesn't know anything else to do to live. I understand what you think, but now you have to live separated from the Christians, as a state, as an empire, as the government that it has always been. Also freeing the Italicus people from slavery. Otherwise, the Lord of the Spirits will not allow more enslavement of the peoples and will send intense acid rain to their headquarters, on their roofs, in their gardens. The son communicates to Plata what will happen from now on. No, please, without the true Christians, what are we? Plata responds despondently to the son, and at that moment, when the son is thinking about how to limit the cruelty of the patriarch, he remembers what the Lord of the Spirits told him. Do not kill him since he carries the curse of Cain. Moreover, Ganges interrupts Plata. Go, son, run, for this house is full of thieves, prostitutes, and liars. And don't worry about the patriarch. That is his nature, that is his way of being, but we will have him set apart where he cannot harm anyone. Ganges shouts to the son, because he knew that the balance of the universe had to be maintained. Don't leave him near the monsters of Dorian. The Son of Man requests Ganges. No, we will have him in a safe place, but away from power. Meanwhile, you must leave before the Nephilim giants arrive and take the old wise man of Loma. Ganges confirms to the son. Okay, and who are they? The son asks in a hurry. The progenitors of the life collectors. Ganges replies. And how are they? The son asks Ganges to identify them immediately. Bottomless, with a dark aura, but they dress in white to twist the truth. Now run, go, and free the old wise man of Loma, who has been bound and gagged in a prison for 60 years. Ganges answers him amidst the chaos of the people in the middle. And wasn't the devastation they caused in the high mountains enough? Manifests the son to Ganges. Quote, Movement of Jah people. Bob Marley and the Wailers. No, remember that they are bottomless and giants not in stature, but in wickedness that consumes their hearts and those of others around them too. Ganges describes better the status of the Nephilim. Namaste. The son responds with gratitude to Ganges before leaving. Son, Plata shouts, wanting to continue the conversation to find a solution to his destiny. Do not be discouraged, for a shoot spring from the stock of Jesse, with the original Bible for all. The son shouts to him and ends his conversation with Plata, immediately leaving the city. Instead, a white dove from Pax et Bonum lands on the Sant'Angelo Bridge, observing what happened. Send an urgent correspondence to the wise man of Loma, because we cannot control his beast, for this son of man is not a dog nor a lion. He is something more than a chimera. He is indescribable. The patriarch says, annoyed and exhausted, to his servants who are by his side. Patriarch, we know that the wise man of Loma is calling and looking for him with all the arts of illusion, since he refuses to accept wealth, Asian geishas, and is not interested in having the key to the next Loma. Because the Son of Man is the king of his life, and what the Lord of the Spirits offers him is enough to pursue his goals in his own way, because he is a non-religious man and does not make unnecessary bonds. Plata replies to the Patriarch, "But this stupid son has stolen my dear daughter, my beloved Popes, and now she does not want to continue her old mission." The Patriarch groans, quote, "A new ruler cannot always act in ways that are considered good, but it is crucial that he should nevertheless appear to be good, and especially that he should appear to be exceptionally compassionate, loyal, humane, honest, and devout." Niccolò Machiavelli. But Patriarch, that is blasphemy. If she does not continue her shadow mission as the queen bee of this old institution, you will no longer have patriarchy. This would be like witnessing the arrival of the Day of the Dead. Plata reminds the Patriarch, very distressed. "Ah, where will we end up? Wasn't it better to keep this Son of Man asleep?" The Patriarch laments sadly with his servitude. Meanwhile, the two kings begin to exchange epistolary letters between the Patriarch and the wise man of Loma to discuss some matters of utmost importance left pending because an appropriate solution has not been found. Many of them are marked in black because they cannot be disclosed, while some are highlighted. After a paragraph underscored in red and a few sentences, you can also read the following. "Dear Loma, I still have your beloved disciple here. He is no longer my hostage in spirit, but I have been unable to control or expel him from my territory. This is not a man nor a dog. What have you left me with here? A chimera. We promised to educate and care for him, but like a swift fish, he escaped the nets of our system. Furthermore, my dear Salve Regina, my Ave Regina, no longer wishes to continue her mission on earth when we only wanted to show both of you the good manners of our doctrine, and as you know, I need my Ave Regina back for my mission, my order. I also want to remind you that our old institution cannot take that great step of change that we promised so long ago. It is very difficult to undo this synod, I would say impossible, because we cannot kill God in our lands. He is necessary to maintain order in this chaos. I hope you understand. What are the true motivations that keep us standing for millennia on these continents? And I continue to do so against my will for the salvation of my believers, my sheep, because they have not yet developed an elevated consciousness, so they must be guided by the next generations. The pastor of the Patriarch writes desperately and humbly to the wise man of Loma, and other parts were cut due to sensitivity. Dear Patriarch, I remind you that you left me with nothing. You only took away what was part of my life to be able to blackmail me. And yes, I know that what we had to do was not done. You know very well that my dear son in spirit was not educated by you, nor was he protected. You only enslaved him and set so many traps, giving him the same potion of yellow fever that you have given to so many millions under your feet, and luckily, I made him sweat it out with his mother in spirit. And yes, I know that he is not even a lion, much less an eagle, because after what you, together with your 7 elders, tried to do to the Son of Man, he had to transform into Sharap. Even I abandoned the idea of showing him our path and entering him into Samsara, since he understood the illusion that hid behind it. So he immediately abandoned my school as well, without returning. And I cannot force another's life for my personal whims, as karma can be reversed against me, and this would be like taking a direct hammer blow to the head. Because he is a non-religious man, and only does what is best for him and his neighbor, not by imposition, but because, like his mother in spirit, he is a historian, a mathematician, a physicist who did not need to see the game theory to understand what the best decision to make is. On the other hand, I want to remind you that our philosophy of life was not ready back then, and we did it. We destroyed what we saw was coming, and what was forming like a latent cancer in fertile lands. False sages who forcibly demanded taxes, dowries, wealth, and more from honest land workers. Why? Simply because they knew two more secrets of life, or were they lazy hyenas who could easily deceive ignorant peasants? So, remember well, dear patriarch, even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night. On the other hand, I would not blame your queen daughter if she no longer follows you on your blessed mission. Do you know why? Because it was not I who sold my daughter, as if she were a heifer, to be carried like tender meat to the Minotaur. The wise man of Loma reminds the patriarch in his response letter for his excuses to keep that god alive, and for the attacks committed even against his own blood. All of this to remind the patriarch of the incessant wars and conflicts, as well as the forced and hidden taxes around the world transferred through the art market by their experts mecenates who make all the final movement before reaching their secure banks marked by the double cross. Secretary, tell me the agenda, the patriarch asks after reading the wise man of the Loma's response. You have a special meeting with the 5 founders, the founders of crises, conflicts, and wars, in 1 hour, the secretary replies to the patriarch. Then, call immediately the ghost city of Cologne and issue a statement with a photo of the Son of Man to have all his European citizen privileges revoked. He should not be able to find a job. Make him live not in poverty, but in total misery, with malnutrition so that he gets up close with all the diseases, bacteria, germs, and most unpleasant viruses a human being can suffer, and inform the observing angels, lawyers, and judges to accuse him of any offense that is convenient to ruin him as soon as possible. The patriarch orders angrily upon seeing the wise man of Loma's reply. Patriarch, but we've been doing that for a long time, since his birth, the secretary reminds him. Por la reconcha de tu hermana, vos es un aborto de mono estúpido. Make it worse. Push hard with the invisible hand, and also make my dear daughter, the Popess, who disobeyed me, suffer too. They cannot be together again until I have life. We must put a strong comma that separates these two rulers. The patriarch recalls with an air of fierceness and anger. Yes, patriarch, your esteemed daughter is already working underpaid in medical studies and mistreated with the worst NLP techniques. Furthermore, she has not been practicing her doctor career for a long time, and they were separated more than 6 months ago and are now being monitored like slaves that suffer from legal issues. She who has seized his belongings in her apartment. Otherwise, we threaten her with her children under our custody, and we accuse him of stalking every time he tries to contact her or goes there to pick up his things. Ha, 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 absurd, isn't it? The secretary replies to the patriarch. Better this way, invisible but disgraceful hard hand, because no one can dare to disobey me, or I return them to La Concha de la Madre de Jesucristo. The patriarch is very angry with the two, with the Son of Man and his beloved daughter Queen, so he seeks a revenge that suits him. But, patriarch, we have to prepare the antithesis, because if the Son of Man releases his masterpiece, it will be like a sword that will break every chain, tie, and curse, including hers and those of the thousands of peoples, the secretary reminds the patriarch, while the latter clenches his fist with a cross around his neck in despair, rage, and falls silent, holding his breath. Fool, no, it's not about a masterpiece. That's just another illusion. It's not about brute force like Hercules or Samson, not about wisdom like Solomon, not about intelligence like Einstein, not even about the beauty of Apollo or the narcissism of a drugged Narcissus, and much less the epics written by Homer or the skill of a highly skilled warrior like Achilles. It's something hermetic and special that only the Lord of the Spirits finds within you. But even the chosen one, be it a woman or a man, doesn't know this, to prevent someone from stealing the grace for a plate of lentils. The patriarch explodes with furious rage at so much ignorance around him and disappointed that he still cannot find a successor. "Forgive me, patriarch, but now we have another problem," the secretary suggests meekly, because he doesn't know how to tell his superior about this. "What? Has Jesus Christ arrived?" He responds heatedly, angrily, and with arrogance to his secretary, to his family. "No, patriarch," the secretary replies, stopped and cold, because he doesn't know how to tell his supreme patriarch about this, for fear of losing not only his position, but also his life. "Then spit it out, because I don't have much time for you." The patriarch is becoming impatient, not knowing what has happened. "The priestesses!" the secretary tells the patriarch in a desperate exclamation. "Yes, today I have an appointment to cut new exotic flowers and nurture them with champagne." The patriarch responds automatically and relaxed, with blatant bipolarity.